Hi, Janet.
Good morning.
How are you?
A little crazy this morning.
Oh.
Locked myself out of my computer.
Well, you got in on time, so that's the important thing. Hi, David.
Hi there.
Called the big honcho at IT and they got me back in. We all had to change passwords yesterday because our external email server was down for 4 days because we got breached by some Chinese people.
You're kidding.
Yeah. So I changed passwords and then I couldn't remember which one I changed it to.
Yeah. My daughter has me using LastPass as a password keeper. So you don't have to remember any of your passwords. You just remember one. It gets you, it can do autofill to anything.
Wow.
It's worth checking out because
I don't think they'd let me do that on the town one.
maybe not.
And we have to change it every 2 months anyway.
Ugh.
We're required to, yeah. So you got to figure out a formula for, yeah.
Right.
Good morning. It's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
So I think we're not having Thea with us this morning. But we'll see who comes in.
Jana, I saw that email you sent out yesterday about, through your personal email. So hopefully everybody got it.
Right, and then about 30 minutes later, the town email came back up.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Mary.
I got
Well,
it.
good morning, everybody.
Hi, Mary.
Morning, Mary.
Here we are. Was it awful not having email, David?
Wouldn't bother me because I'm somewhere else right now.
Oh. I think that would be hard for some offices.
Well, I had to communicate stuff about the economic task force, and
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
No.
It all went out late yesterday. Hi, James.
Oh, hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi, James.
Hi, James.
Hi.
James.
How you doing? Just gonna
Pretty
duck
good.
and get a quick cup of tea.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Liz.
Good morning.
Hey, Janet, the mountain is shrouded in, at least the summit's shrouded in clouds right now.
Then you're not going up there today.
No.
That'd be nasty.
Yeah, that would be interesting going up there to see, when it's all foggy or cloudy up there.
A few times I've been up there, it's been a clear day and you can see the ocean from the summit.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the 2 times we've been up, it's been the same thing.
Yeah. But you don't want to be on that peak on a bad weather.
Windy day.
Oh, hi, Liz.
Good morning.
How are you?
Nice to see you.
Looking well. Nice group today.
A few more we're waiting on, like the chair.
Love your background, Mary.
Thank you. I would have put up the NHA Zoom backgrounds, but I didn't have time this morning. In case you didn't know, you can go to NHA. They have Zoom backgrounds of the Rainbow Fleet and
Oh, I'll have to
Tony
check that out.
Sarg and the
Nice.
windmill and just, okay, there's a plug, James. Okay.
Love it.
Yeah, look
Well,
at,
there
look
we
at.
go.
Is that the one you
Brother.
use for board meetings?
That's my
Is,
board.
yeah, a shark behind you?
We all love Jaws. You need to play the music.
My conservation foundation one is the best. Let me put that one on.
Oh, that's nice.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gives me a halo too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, who
Hey,
was missing?
Josh.
This might be it. I hadn't heard from Peter Morrison. Had you, David, before you left?
No, and that's not Peter's number on that phone symbol, so it's got to be.
That's Karen. Karen's on the phone and on the computer, I think.
Oh, she is? Okay. But I think we do have a quorum.
All right. Do you want to read your script, Josh?
Sure. All right. Motion to call to order the Visitor Services Advisory Committee. Does it have to be seconded?
Second.
All right. As a preliminary matter, this is Josh Gray, Chair of the Visitor Services Advisory Committee. Please confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, Sharon Quigley,
Present.
Mary Malaves,
Here.
Liz Holland,
Here.
Karen McCumber,
Here.
and I think Peter Morrison is absent. Am I missing anyone?
And Thayer's absent too.
Oh, Thayer. Staff present?
I'm here.
I'm here.
All right. And welcome to James, our speaker today. Let's see, the open meeting of the Visitor Services Advisory Council is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have advised and directed the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement for the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, oh, Jan, do you have it? My second page won't come up, sorry.
For this meeting, Visitor Services Advisory Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We now turn to the first meeting on the agenda. which is approval of the February minutes.
All right, motion to approve the February minutes.
So moved.
All right, motion passed. 1 second. Sorry, I know you sent it to me, Janet, on your personal.
So the next item is our conversation with the NHA Executive Director about summer 2021 programming in the Macy warehouse renovations.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us again, James. So I guess just to start with, maybe some of the committee members have some questions about what's coming up for the NHA. I know you guys just reopened the museum. I'm sure we'd be interested to hear how that process has gone and the challenges you face there.
Sure, delighted. Just in the interest of time, how much time have you allotted for this conversation? 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Jan?
15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, 15,
Half
20.
hour.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. We can, okay, so it doesn't have to be superficial. Super. Well, so, a recap on last year, we were able to keep COVID outside the walls, which was terrific. I thought the measures that we put in place were robust. Having Dr. Malcolm McNabb sitting at the front desk, he's one of our interpreters, and having him there, I think gave a lot of us confidence because if he was there, well, then we should be there, and nobody would know better than him. And so that helped. Obviously it was disruptive in all areas of earned income. Surprisingly, on the philanthropic side at year end, particularly with some of the higher end gifts, probably tagging to Wall Street, we were able to come into the black and ended the year in a positive financial position. So that was terrific. And what was really very good about that was all staff took a 20% pay cut voluntarily back in March, and we were able to pay back staff and make them whole by the end of the year. So that was very well received. So, now the challenge is, and our staff decreased organically. People who elected that with COVID, it was time to move on. So our numbers did come down organically, but I still felt that, in the digital space, like a lot of other organizations have found, we've been able to do some very robust and innovative programming. And just by way of benchmarks, if you go back to 2019, this time of the year, when we'd put on a program, we'd have 20, 30, it'd be a good day if 40 people showed up for a program, very good day. Now we're tracking 100 to 200 at some of our digital programs. So it allows us to speak to a number of different constituencies, obviously on island, but also off island, seasonal, and even new. So I feel like, there is definitely a silver lining as we figure out how to communicate for longer with some of this, and I suspect we'll keep doing that post-COVID. In terms of exhibits, we'll keep some of the exhibits up last year and just upgrade them to a 2.0 version because not so many people saw the exhibits at the Whaling Museum. All our other properties we closed, mostly just because we just didn't have a high degree of confidence in our ability to keep more than one site clean and sanitized. So we put all our efforts into the Whaling Museum with the various sanitation regimes. This year we're going to open up Hadwin House and Thomas Macy, and then just on a private basis we'll have the 99 Main open across the street from Hadwin. So I think we can do all this and still keep our various social distancing measures in mind. We are assuming there's going to be an uptick in tourism, probably not as much as 19, but certainly better than 20. And that's going to be greatly helpful. I would say that Hadwin House is going to be a very interesting exhibit. I was just up there yesterday inspecting what's going on. And I think it should be quite a draw. When we opened it in, let me see, we opened one floor in 2018. Then we were able to get the second floor open in 2019. And there were just shy, I think it was around 8,000 people or so were going to Hadwin House, making it our second largest draw. And so I expect that to only increase over time as people are interested in going up historic Main Street and, as they walk up to the Civil War Monument. The other change, probably just from a tourist point of view, is our craft classes are going to move from 1800 House over to Greater Light. We think that's a better use for a better space for those classes, and that's happening concurrently. At the Whaling Museum, major activities taking place with Anne Ramsdale Congdon, whom many of you know. That'll be our premiere show in the McCausland Gallery upstairs. And then we continue a multi-year initiative called the Road from Abolition to Suffrage, where we're looking at role of underserved communities and also a gender look at the exhibits. And that's going very well as we acquire or we receive new donations to the collection, which help us speak more about that. And then an interesting tangent off that is work we have with the Cape Verdean community, and we have an exhibit on Cape Verdean Nantucketers opening Memorial Day called The Shoulders on Which We Stand. And that's a community curated exhibit, and it's going to be, it's been pretty well received. We've got a very nice advisory group working on that. All to say, that gets us to, I can just jump in here with questions. I'm just trying to give you a quick overview, but as we look to Thomas Macy Warehouse, first of all, special thanks to CPC. CPC has put, I think, invested about $630,000, I think it is, into Thomas Macy Warehouse. And then we got some state money and some private money. And the whole project is about $1 million to restore, renovate the exterior and the interior, and will be substantially complete by May of this year. Or at least I hope so, or else our tenant's going to be annoyed. So the goal is to, it's going to be a very aesthetic sort of a restoration. There's not a lot going into the space other than what's required by code with sprinklers, electrical, etc. But it's beautiful once you take out there was an awful lot of stuff in there, and it's amazing opening it up, particularly on the first floor. And then when you get to the second floor, we have bathrooms there. They won't be open to the public. We're delighted to let Janet and David take care of that. Let people hold it for a couple of blocks. But we'll have bathrooms on the second floor for tenants, and also a special exhibit that we're working on with Remains. So just to unpack that all a little bit more, we are looking for a tenant on the first floor. We hope to have that tenant shortly, probably be a pop-up show between May and Columbus Day, I imagine. I don't know who that is right now, but we hope that a tenant can get in there by May and have it open by May 15th or June. On the second floor, we're dedicating that to exhibit space and programming space. It really is a beautiful space, and it's been renovated really well by Scott Anderson and his crew. And we're very happy with the progress. You're all welcome to go in there, just sign the book to the right-hand side if you wanted to pop your head in. And the exhibit by Remain is looking at climate change. And you may have read this in the Inky, where they're working with various universities to look at what the downtown could look like in 50 years or so, and how should we anticipate and how should we start thinking about it. So seems appropriate that the Macy warehouse being on the wharf, which, you know, will be affected. Water was lapping up to the stoop there back in December 17 rather, that we have that as the inaugural exhibit on the second floor. The building itself has been prepared to withstand infiltration of water if there is a high tide, etc. And we've taken all mechanicals, lifted them off. All electrical is suspended from the ceiling. And as you know, it's porous as get-go. There's no foundation. So the water, literally hydrostatic pressure plus simply rising water, it'll just come into the building. But the advice we've received from experts, including a chap who was with the National Park Service, was to let the water in, but to also let the water get out as quickly as possible. So on the first floor, the materials are sturdy. It's brick and granites and thick wood. If anything, the wood will get pickled by the salt water. And it's obviously withstood the test of time since 46. So we're pretty happy with this renovation. On the left-hand side, when you walk in the front door, we want to dedicate a section of space for promoting our partner organizations. And I know there's work with the cultural district that's in some state. And kind of what Cecil Jensen and I were envisioning there was, you could imagine a big touch screen where a visitor could come in and then kind of interrogate, where do they want to go? Do they want to go out to Sankaty? Do they want to take a walk out to Sam Farm? Do they want to, go to Egan Maritime, or is there a particular play that they want to pick up that evening? And there's some sort of a computer interaction, which is which would be controlled not by us. So it would be, there wouldn't be a concern about bias. It would be updated by, an agnostic third party. At some point, I know there were conversations about a ticket booth, but I don't think they've gotten very far. So I think it's a super way to, because so many tourists walk by the building, it's not necessarily a place we envision year-round community going to with a high degree of frequency in the summer for obvious reasons. And ditto, I don't think it's necessarily a location that seasonal residents would necessarily go to during the summer. Not that they won't, it's just the foot traffic past there, and the primary focus has got to be on the tourists. So I think there's an opportunity to message out what we want to message out, and we're certainly open to what that could look like. And in that regard, a number of trial balloons were floated earlier in the year. One of them was to use this first year when we're getting through COVID, and also we haven't, we're just learning how to use this building. It'll take us a year or two or three to figure out how to use the building and what its peculiarities are. And we'd floated the idea of a cultural mall where 10 or 12 or so nonprofits on the island would each take a space and talk about their particular missions, and we would have demonstration. The idea was to have demonstrations and make it quite interactive and engaging. I think it's a great idea, but and the price was right. But all ideas, its day will come, but it's not going to be this year. I think for all very logical reasons, people are capacity constrained, and it was just asking some folks just to go a little bit too far. as they're dealing, as each organization is figuring out how to climb out of this COVID hole. Perhaps I should just stop there for a moment and just take some
Yeah,
questions.
Sharon has a question.
Thank you, James. That was really interesting and helpful. I have two questions. The first quick one is 1800s house. So what's going to go in there?
Well, that's a very good question, Sharon. Do I have to answer it?
No, you don't have to answer at all. It's just it's such a beautiful historic building. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to answer. Second question I have is when you're doing these Zoom lectures that are reaching far beyond the island to people who have an interest, maybe people have never been here, but are drawn by the history. Is there any kind of co-marketing that we can, anything we can do to promote the island during those conversations? Have you done anything or thought about that? Or is that completely inappropriate at the end to say, please, come see the island. Here's information if you're interested in coming and seeing the island in person.
I can tell you, we spend quite a bit of time in this, Sharon. We don't necessarily have answers, but there's a whole series of sub-questions that hang off that bigger question. Who's coming, why are they coming, what are the psychographics of the people who are coming, what are the demographics of people coming, what are the likelihood, propensity of folks coming into a museum versus just coming to the town to get their ice cream and hop back on Liz's Ferry. So I'd like to say we have more information on that. We don't. We're tracking zip codes. This is actually quite interesting. Well, we have been tracking zip codes for a long time, and so no surprise that it's the tri-state area, and obviously Massachusetts has probably over 50% of people visiting. We're delighted to share that information. There's nothing proprietary about that information. I don't know how that could be triangulated with what other people are getting, but I suspect that if you extrapolate out the data that we have, you may get a good sense of the psychographic or the demographics of the folks who are coming on island, right? Because we would get a subset. We get a subset, a small subset of the tourists, but it is largely tourist driven. So that could be interesting information. The other interesting piece to that is, as a result of COVID and introducing timed tickets, we're projecting that in about 3 years we could have 50,000 email lists. This thing just doesn't stop growing because it's 60, 70,000 people a year, and if you got 20,000 emails, assuming you come in a pack of 3, well, that compounds very quickly. So it's making us think differently about how we communicate, because that's a lot of emails.
It's a very valuable list.
Yeah, so how do we segment that list? How do we...
maybe you can make a profit off the list. You are a nonprofit, but maybe you can use it for financial benefit to the organization too.
Well, the thought has crossed our minds. NPR, it's you advertise in NPR, but I don't know of another organization that would, if this thing starts going north of 50,000, that's a pretty big list, I think, for the island. Yeah. But it's certainly, there's some interesting information as we switch into the digital side, because we can track it so much more.
Yeah, you could also send a post survey, like through SurveyMonkey, to find out more of the psychographics. Are you a history buff? Have you been to the island before? And maybe, at the end, see what additional information you can glean about who is attending these. And you may not know how to use the information until you have it, but it might be really interesting information for the island businesses to have access to, or for you to have access to. It's just a thought, as you have such a great touch point with so many people. It would be great to capitalize it in other ways.
Well, the only non-bias, well, it is biased, but it's not biased by us, is TripAdvisor. And there are a lot of reasons to be careful about taking that data, but it is interesting that when you look at, if you look at comments over a 3-year period, two things have come up. It used to be there were concerns about the $20 price for entry. You don't see that anymore. So that suggests that when it comes to the question of value, we're providing value. And there were also some positive comments about the bundled all access price of $25 where you go to see the other sites. And so that's positive. The second thing is the length of time has gone from an hour, hour and a half to 2.5 to 3 hours, I think it is. So that, I don't know how they get to that number. It's some algorithm, but they're two data points which I find to be of interest. It means that people are spending longer and also finding value in the experience.
Peter?
Let me pick up on Sharon's point. I'm really struck by the fact that you've got what you could call the beginnings of some big data. And Sharon's right. You've got some really interesting possibilities here. And I'm not going to go into what they are because it's not my area of expertise. But it seems to me that if you start with the premise that you have, in a sense, a crude de facto census of a segment of Nantucket's population about which we know virtually nothing except what we get from their cell phones. And that is the transitory visitor population as opposed to the census counted resident year-round or seasonal population. So if you start with that premise and say, what are the questions that you as a lay analyst think would be very valuable to answer that might have some possibility of being answered with these data? My suggestion would be to, if you come up with a palette of questions and some interesting stuff, consider me in my separate role as kind of a liaison with the Worcester Polytech Institute student teams that come here now more than twice a year with teams looking for interesting projects, to dive into that problem and say, well, what could you learn from these data? And secondly, you could have them, I immediately wrote down on your notion of having computer interactive modes of visitors interacting with you. That's really dead center in their area of expertise. I know they've done some projects with you all before, and I wouldn't hesitate to have another team come back and say, well, we're now thinking of these kinds of ideas. What could you do if we had these kinds of data? And, could you build an app for us? Those are two suggestions to, I guess, put on your list of, its day will come, not immediately, but those are some ideas that I think would really benefit, would pick these ideas up and go somewhere with them in a way that you wouldn't have to pay them. You just have to run a student team and talk to them once a week.
Well, first of all, I love working with WPI. I've been doing it for the 3 years, and I think it's very valuable. So I think that's a super project, and I'd be delighted to recommend it. And thanks for your help on that. I too am not an expert on data, but I know it when I see it, sort of thing. I mean, the question is, what do we do? I mean, knowing that a lot of people come from New York, knowing that a lot of people come from Massachusetts, okay. So what's the actual item? What's the action item that we take? Because, and this gets back, I think maybe to Sharon's question, what can we do to leverage, whether it's via MOT, is there some leveraging capability there, or through some other entity to target off island, as opposed to maybe waiting for everybody to come and talking to them once they get on the ferry? Is there a way to adjust and influence before they get on the ferry? And so we've been thinking, I did submit a grant to MOT. There was some I don't know, I forget the name of the grant, to be honest, I've written so many. But we made a case that we should partner with the museum in Hyannis with the logic that if we could have a presentation in Hyannis, whether you're going to, Highline or steamship, that it's there, and we'll see if that comes through. That could be a bridgehead for moving forward. And, perhaps the Cape is the first area to start that we're beginning to explore. I would say the issue of constituencies, that we are spending quite a lot of time on this, particularly as we start thinking about DEI issues. And that makes us turn inward quite a bit, because we ask ourselves, how can we attract different constituencies? As you look at the communities on island, how do you target and bring in constituencies that may not traditionally come to the Whaling Museum is another area of interest that we're looking at.
Well, I can pick up on that idea if you want for just a second. You've got probably 6 or 8 or 10 sizable country of origin groups on Nantucket, and they constitute a destination target. If you take all the Nepalese in the United States, and if they knew what was on Nantucket, they might say, let's go to Nantucket because I want to learn more about the Nepalese community on Nantucket, or the Bulgarian community, or the Dominican community. I mean, it's another way to think about the whole thing. And that's, again, something that is quantifiable with the town census. And I was going to say that I know you've had some exhibits in the past that featured, celebrating a particular group. And I think you had one on the Nepalese, this maybe 5-6 years ago. And I was going to suggest that you really have an opportunity if you envision Nantucket as what I regard it as, which is a miniature immigrant entry gateway. It is very much so. It's an extraordinary community demographically, because it has a presence of so many interesting groups. And when you talked about the Cape Verdean group, that's just one of half a dozen you could work off of if you took that theme.
Sharon, can I come to you in a moment? I just want to answer that. So the Cape Verdean story is, to me, a very logical story. First of all, it's a traditional community of whaling. And so, it should almost be in a permanent basis or semi-permanent basis talked about at the museum. So, and I think the Inky is doing something on this week. So that's very logical. The struggle we have when it comes to, the Bulgarian community, we allowed them to use Hadwin House for their school during COVID. And, I can tell you, when you walk into Hadwin House, where all the stereotypes you have of what Hadwin House should be like, and you start seeing Bulgarian script on the wall, it's really cool. And it's absolutely, just watching those kids in there, it's super. But all to say, there weren't too many whales killed in Bulgaria.
Right.
So we have to, which brings up the marketing question, right? We have to, how do we balance, and maybe Mary, you mentioned this to me, I can't remember, but the Whaling Museum is what the tourist wants, but is that what the NHA should be? Because that pegs us in a way that I feel uncomfortable. And the story here, I absolutely agree with what you said, Peter. It's, it's not the only place in America that can talk about this story, but we sure as hell can tell a good one. And so how can we talk about the communities on the island and have their stories reflected, whether it's, like you say, Caribbean basin or the islands, these volcanic islands from the Azores to Cape Verde, or the eastern, former, Eastern European countries.
Well, I'll give you one phrase
or
for
Asian.
it. It's history in the making.
Right. Sharon, you had a question?
Yeah, so back to the beginning of that was what other demographic groups. I wondered if you had thought about using the Zoom platform for schools and reaching schools across the country and doing curriculum for them?
Step at a time, Sharon. You know, there's a lot of competition in that space, and I'm not sure we can do it really well. So, you know, while we do things average, I mean, you know, like any organization, you do things not so well, you do things average, and some things you excel at. As we look at, you know, with limited capacity, I would say that, you know, I admire what Egan Maritime does in the schools, right? I think that is very robust, very serious. It changes lives. And I would say that is, you know, a terrific program. I'm not sure I would put our program at that level yet. So I think we've got a lot of local work to do. And the program that I think is strategically differentiating, in the sense that I haven't seen it on the island or in any robust fashion, I guess, or maybe I just don't know. It's an apprenticeship program for high school kids, where after school they get paid, they learn in a professional milieu, and it's a jumping stone or stepping stone to college. And we've had a little success in the past couple of years on that, and that's beginning to pick up steam. And we've just made the decision this year to double that. So we're going with a avocational approach with craft programs, and that's why we're focusing on Greater Light. So that those craft programs, instead of being targeted, they're expensive during the summer, and they're also targeted to a clientele, to bring that year round, run it K through Gray, and have them subsidized, so that you could make Ukrainian egg paintings, you could make baskets from Bulgaria, you could do textiles from Cape Verde. And so there's a nice way to integrate the community in a project based fashion. But also looking at high school kids. And we think this could be an area. Where we don't get a lot of traction, and I've talked to peers off island, that education space is fairly cluttered, and organizations, for instance, Mystic would come to mind, which has got a very robust physical, digital presence. Although I do know that everybody on the call here was listening to C-SPAN 3 at 7:20 on Saturday because Nat Philbrick was on. It was which is pretty neat, actually. C-SPAN has now caught on to our videos that the Novissimo's made, and I think this is like the 5th or 6th. I was sitting down over Christmas enjoying my turkey dinner, and up pops an NHA program on C-SPAN 3. So there you go. National reach.
Anyone else have any questions? How's the reopen at the Whaling Museum gone, James? Are you seeing any traffic, or is it just kind of slowly gaining momentum?
Oh, it's very quiet. It's very quiet.
I mean, it would be normally this time of year, I assume, right?
Yeah. It's you know, look, if we were inner city, different environment, I'd be very cautious about it. But look, theft here is not an issue, so I don't have to staff up. It's not a heavy lift, and the front desk becomes, as a matter of fact, there are more interruptions in my office than at the front desk, so it's actually the quietest place to be. But I'm delighted to do it. It does look like this idea that we started a couple of years ago about free admission for the community is baking in, and I don't see any reason why that's gonna change. It doesn't affect us from a financial point of view, and you know, in a sense, you know, dropping barriers and you know, anything to allow people to come over a threshold, I think is a good thing. So frankly, that's why we're doing it. It's certainly not monetary, not a monetary reason.
Right. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Mary?
And yeah, I just want to add, if any of you have not had the time to be on any of the webinars that the NHA has done. I've got to give my little plug for James. There's one coming up with two women about Ireland and famine, and sort of interesting. You can do crafts tonight with Mary, and transferware I think she's doing tonight. But what I've been able to do is go to the website. You can download any website there's your transferware. Sharon's holding it up. You can download any website to your screen on your iPhone. Most people don't know that. They think you have to have a separate app. And usually when you do that, you can pick up the calendar every day of what's going on. And I have to tell you, C-SPAN was pretty exciting, to see how they not only picked up on that, which is, a given, but, some of the other stories that they did. So I think the fact that what's been done virtually is getting out there in a way that no one thought of. So I think that's positive. When you talk about, the tri-state area where people come from, that's no different than the first marketing committee I was on in the early 70s. We used to call them the tank away people. It took a tank of gas to get to the Cape, and then they came over. So some of those numbers have never changed. And back in that day, I'm talking pre-internet, pre-everything, we were able to work with American Express, because obviously they were capturing any of the sales that took place here. And they became a wonderful marketing partner for the island in that, they had a huge marketing engine. So some of these things haven't changed. We just need to tweak them for the environment we're in now. No, James, obviously the NHA is an anchor for all of us. So thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if you want to, feel free to hop off, James, but thank you so much for your time and all that really great information.
Well, thanks. Okay, thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you, James.
Talk to you soon. All right. I think next is Janet, your report, I believe.
Yes, it's been pretty busy upstairs here at the visitor center. I'm on the economic task force. I'm one of the 3 co-chairs. We're meeting weekly. We've written a grant proposal. We've done a TV show, and we're trying to spend money that we got from the state in the fall to be able to reopen streets and spaces this summer. So we're looking to buy some more picnic tables that we're going to spread around the island, not just downtown, but more at Children's Beach, some out by the island home, and other spaces where we know there are beautiful places to sit and enjoy your takeout meal as a way to encourage people to partake in outdoor dining. I received a $7,500 grant from the Mass Cultural Council for 4 organizations in the cultural district to support their virtual programming. And what I've learned from those places, like the Music Center and Mariah Mitchell, is that they've really expanded their audiences, as James had described, to international markets as well as broader national reaches as well. So it really is changing the way people are thinking about their programming now, and probably their fundraising as well for that kind of participation. The district is also talking about a new calendar. James mentioned that there was going to be some kind of a kiosk at the Macy warehouse, and that's going to be a cultural district effort. So we're looking to purchase and develop a more robust calendar for all the cultural organizations, for individual artists or performers to be able to put their activity there, and people can walk in. You can get it on an app, you can get it on your computer, you can go into the kiosk and find out what's going on, and you can filter by type of activity or programming as well. So I'm doing some research on that this week with a couple of other organizations on the Cape and in the North Shore that are using it. It's a very popular cultural calendar app that I hadn't heard about. Vanna Gonzalez found it, and I think it's going to be the trick will be to make it more known to people that this calendar is out there and that it's particularly focused on arts and culture. One Book, One Island is starting up shortly. In fact, the Artists Association had their programming available yesterday to make a story quilt. The book is The Yellow House by Sarah Bloom, set in mostly New Orleans, and talks about climate change and a lot of issues. It's great. It's a great read. The plastics ban work group has been reprised, and we sort of went quiet last summer because there was so much going on, but now there's a communications gone out to businesses saying, if you're using non-recyclable single-use things under a liter, you can't be doing that anymore. Now, the enforcement is basically through complaints. But there are a few places that Stop and Shop's done a great job trying to get themselves up to speed in terms of addressing this. But there are still a few places where you can find those 12-ounce bottle of water, 16-ounce bottle of water that we're trying to move along and get those out of the system. There's talk about, I'm involved with conversations about a commuter shuttle to bring people downtown because we think we're going to have more people here this summer. If we have closed streets, we're going to need to find some solution for workers, particularly to get into town. So there's talk about the parking lot at 2 fairgrounds has been expanded from about 100 cars to like 300 cars. That should be done shortly. And they're talking about running one of the NERDA shuttles through there to bring people into town, as well as some of the park and rides satellite sites that are around the Mid-Island area as well. I'm on a group looking at street furniture. Who knew? I didn't even know the term till I got on this committee, but we're looking at things like benches, rogue planters, and talking about public art policy as well, because we're starting to see more art popping up in places, and some of it's in the public way, which has ADA issues and the like. And we're also making sure that, like the art that goes into the roundabout at Sparks, that it follows a certain kind of parameters that we would want to have in a public art program. So that's an interesting conversation. And who knew that culture and tourism would be involved in a dog park, particularly when I have 4 cats. But I'm on a committee with the land bank they're putting in a dog park off at Surfside, Maya Comet, in an old, in a wooded area, and that should be done, I think, by this summer. So there'll be one for big dogs and little dogs and an agility park. And I've learned an awful lot about dogs in this dog park conversation. There's plans to put in a memorial there's a dog, to Arthur Cooper, who was a runaway slave who settled in Nantucket in the 19th century and was assisted here by various abolitionists. They're going to put a memorial to him on Angola Street sometime in August or September. And we're planning the program with that, with the Museum of African American History out of Boston is involved with that. And we're working with Parks and Recs about programming at Children's Beach. We're not sure what we're going to do from the office yet in terms of whether we're going to have our regular activities at Children's Beach, but we are getting requests from the dance festival and community sailing to use that facility to do some programming. And we support that, because I think given the hard year that they had last year, we want to see that space to have more use and to allow people to have continue to express their programming and their activities. And finally, I'm involved with the strategic planning implementation for the select board, and we're gearing that back up for another report from the various work groups that are implementing the strategic plan to the select board, probably in April sometime. But there's an awful lot going on, and I'd rather be busy than not. So, any questions?
Are you sleeping? It doesn't look like you have a minute to eat or sleep.
I know.
Liz?
First of all, I'm super excited about that kiosk in the Macy warehouse. But just thinking maybe Highline can help direct people to that area. I mean, we certainly will in the office, but it might be something that it can start on the mainland.
Yeah, we're thinking that we need to really market that kiosk, including advertising on the Highline and the TV screens.
Yep.
To buy something there, because people could check that out while they're riding over.
That's right. Well, we've since I want to say maybe like around June, Highline actually took over those screens, which was being handled by an independent friend of somebody, blah, 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 from Highline. So I know that Betsy's definitely looking for ideas and stuff like that. Right now, we're kind of working with the IT portion of it, of exactly how we can go about that. And we're having little issues with that. But that would be something that, we could really work on together.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
When somebody does report, somebody breaking the plastics rules, who enforces?
I think it might be DPW. We haven't had an episode yet for it. And I'm not even sure what that would look like, except to go in and say, this is not allowed anymore and you need to get something else in and provide information. I mean, the approach all along since I started on this a couple of years ago has been educating vendors and their supply streams about what the options are for not having single-use plastic in there. So I think it's just a matter of continuing along that line. My sense is, though, it would be the Graham Durovich is the recycling coordinator for the DPW, and that she would probably be the one that has to go in and say something to somebody about it.
Right.
Janet, quick question. Is it like coach and counsel at this point? There's no fine or anything, is there?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah.
No. But the idea is that we're protecting our water supply and, reducing our waste stream and all that kind of business. And those bottles that say Nantucket water, they're boxes, those are even worse than the plastic water bottles. So those are all coming off the shelves too.
I just make a marginal suggestion here. The way we humiliate people who violate the law by driving under the influence or without their registration updated is their name appears in the Inky in bold type in a small column in a corner somewhere. You might want to file that away.
Yeah. Walter's Deli. I don't really want to.
Yeah, it's a powerful disincentive if it's a business.
Yeah.
All right. Unless anyone else has another question, David.
Okay, everybody got the figures for February, and it's pretty self-explanatory. There were 22 people who came into the office, and we had more phone calls than people. Mailings, on the other hand, are up. Actually, we had 61 mailings, 50 of which were to a AAA travel office in Pennsylvania. And this allows us to mail out the old 20 travel lodging guides with the new 21 stickers on the top of them. So people seem to be very receptive of getting the old guide and being able to scan the code and going to the new guide online. With that said, we had 409 downloads of the travel and lodging guide. And of course, our restaurant list has still going up in the stratosphere with 6,628 downloads for the month. And in the chart that I've also provided you, we seem to have a uptick on Saturday, the 27th, with 539 downloads. Not sure why that was such an increase. It could be the approach of the school break. The other thing is that our front page views are 492 viewings, and and then the other thing is the event list, the 21 event list. 193 people viewed that, so that should be increasing soon because people start to decide what to do. So that really is all that I have at this point, and be glad to answer any questions.
Just one note, David. I have noticed that after the governor comes across and says something.
Can you speak up, Karen?
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here.
I'm sorry. Now can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And,
Sorry, I've got two things going here. Sorry, okay. Hopefully now you can hear me okay. I was just going to say that after After the governor makes an announcement about things loosening up, and/or if the president starts announcing anything about vaccines, I'm noticing that our phones are starting to kind of ring off the hook at the inn. So that might have something to do with the restaurant requests and things like that. So
Yeah.
I would just expect as we move forward, if there's more announcements about loosening and travel being easier to do, that you'll probably see some spikes that way. I know
Actually,
we've seen a lot of new reservations come in the last week.
yeah, the phones started to really in the last week or two start ringing, and people are asking about June, July, September. What's the best time to come? And a lot of them are also asking, well, what's going to be open, store wise? And we're really kind of, I tell them call back closer to when they arrive because by that point we'll have a better idea as to what's opening, because there's at least 10 or 12 storefronts downtown that are closed, and some other, obviously, restaurants like the Brotherhood closing. We don't really know what's coming back, in those respects, but it's really going to be interesting to see what happens this summer, because based upon the reports of the the ferry bookings being higher and the real estate transactions going up, I think we're going to have a very busy summer in some way, and with the vaccines coming out. But really, I can't make a prediction, but I can see the increase in inquiries coming into the office.
I agree. And at the chamber, Marina and Chantal are actively calling all the businesses as much as they can, since we're trying to do some promotion around what would have been Daffodil timeframe.
Yeah.
So, they should hopefully be able to communicate back what is opening and when.
Well, what's interesting when you say about Daffodil, I haven't heard very much in terms of any inquiries about that specific weekend or time frame, but we've had a few about July and what's going on in July and August with the big events. So that too is like people are asking when Boston Pops are going to be happening, and it's just really, that's still up in the air.
Anyone else? All right. I think that was the full agenda. Is that right, Jan?
Yep.
And our next meeting?
Is a month from today. So that would be April 12th, I think, second Tuesday, April 13th.
All right.
And I think I'm going to try to get the new guy at the Music Center to come and tell us what's going on.
Oh, perfect. All right. Sounds good. All right. Motion to adjourn the March 9th, 2021 meeting of the Visitor Services Advisory Committee. Second? All right. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.